So the scripture for today is from the book of Nehemiah, chapter 1, verse 4. And it reads, I wept, and for several days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. And the meditation is the following. I want to once again touch upon this event in the life of Nehemiah. Before us is a human soul in sudden, sincere contact with God. Nehemiah addresses his Creator and asks for his instructions in a decisive moment of his life. In this appeal, we can find much that is instructive for us. Nehemiah prays amid the lavish imperial halls in the presence of the Persian King and Queen, surrounded by a great crowd of people and a splendid banquet. It would be difficult, it seems, to choose a less favorable time and place for prayer. But Nehemiah, as it says in the epistle to the Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 27, all earthly grandeur suddenly vanishes before him, as do also the sovereign of the Persian kingdom and his festive surroundings. Nothing gets in the way of his access to the invisible, and he enters into communion with his God. Each one of us has probably felt an almost physical impossibility of turning to God in intimate prayer in certain circumstances in which, however, we very often find ourselves. Whether this is a motley crowd surrounding us, or a noisy gathering, or the fuss and emptiness of a moral nonentity, in leaving there, we must admit that we were very far from our God, and it seemed to be in a different world. But this should not be. Our God is not only a God of the hills, but of the valleys as well, as it says in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 6, verse 3. And if we belong to him, our thoughts will just as freely rise to him in the middle of a noisy crowd as in the privacy of a room in our house or during an evening hour when all of nature falls asleep in silence. But in the first chapter of Nehemiah, we see how he sat down and wept, and for several days mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven, as it says in the scripture. And in this sincere, solitary prayer, he undoubtedly in advance acquired the strength and capability of calling upon the Lord at any time and in any circumstance. It was as if an unconscious impulse elevated his soul to God in a difficult moment, knowing where to seek support and assistance. So, convinced that secret prayer gives us the possibility of praying always and everywhere, we must teach ourselves to constantly seek God every minute in persistent prayer, taking advantage of moments of solitude. And then when we have to leave our solitude and interact with people and walk before the sons of men, as it says in Psalm 31, verse 19, we will already know how to present our request to God, as St. Paul says in his letter to the Philippians, chapter 4, verse 6, and no external conditions will be able to hinder our communion with the Lord.